Welcome back to the Weekly News Roundup. We are talking now about, is AI a liability for you? And this one here is, the short answer is yes. In fact, before I get into it, there's two more things that come to my attention as I was working on this. One of those is, we'll mention this one, Robbie Starbucks. He just filed a lawsuit this week against Google because Google's AI, and not just Google, I think it's everybody's AI, has basically been pushing out the absolute worst, most horrible stuff about this person. And I've heard his name before. I don't know under what context or exactly who he works for. But according to AI, he is this, he basically is the most evil person walking the planet right now. And they have a long track record, almost 2 years of contacting Google and other CEOs of these AI companies and saying, hey, what's going on with this? Can you guys fix this? None of this stuff is true. And it would go deep with its AI hallucinations on simple prompts like, give me the bio of this guy, because apparently he wronged them in their past life or something. So that's just one of those cases. And I've always said this, why is it that AI never hallucinates that somebody has built an orphanage? It always hallucinates some form of misconduct. Well, the reason is because AI is evil. It is trained on the things we like to see, and it's people who are naturally bent towards evil, and we are. It is trained on these things, and so when it wants to provide an answer, it's programmed to provide an answer, and it refuses to do so, it doesn't find something, it makes it up in what we call an AI hallucination. And because all of the training is overwhelmingly negative news, because that's what sells, AI overwhelmingly produces negative hallucinations on people. And that is a fundamental problem that we have to look at. So that is actually one of the cases that I saw. The other one is actually still a little bit of speculation, but we've been following the YouTuber who got 2 videos taken down this week for simply showing you how to create a Windows 11 computer, without a Microsoft account. And YouTube's been taking those down under the topic of it creates dangerous, it teaches people to do dangerous and life-threatening things, which is totally insane and totally crazy. And in one of his latest videos, he speculates that this is all just AI. In fact, we saw a similar principle. One of the things that was happening a while back is if people started on this trend, then pretty much any trend, and it would start becoming oversaturated, the AI content moderators on all of these content platforms would just start mass flagging everything. It was kind of an interesting thing. And I'm wondering if that's not what might be going on, but it's very clear AI is involved in this. And then of course we find out, and I have almost no information on this, it's just breaking today, YouTube offered effectively a retirement buyout to everybody, citing AI. And we're going to be talking about that here in a few minutes here with the Amazon laying off thousands of people for AI. It looks like Google now maybe laying off thousands of people for AI. And you have all of these issues. Well, what it appears might be happening is the AI moderation, they basically want to probably lay off all the moderation teams, appoint it all to AI, but the AI is still making critical mistakes. So those are 2 other stories that happened in the last 24 hours since I was writing my various notes and things like that. But I want to go ahead and cover a lot of articles about AI. And the first one is to show that AI can indeed be used for some positive things. There are some positive stuff that one can do with AI. In this case, a family had a death in the family, and the hospital presents them with a $195,000 bill for the medical services. And in these medical services, the family looks and says, this is absurdly expensive for a couple hours, really, of medical treatment. So they actually, the first step, though, they had to do is they had to push back on the hospital and say, hey, you can't just say, here's $195,000. You need to break this down a little bit. because they didn't do that. They simply handed them a $195,000 medical bill with no breakdown. They're like, yeah, I need to see that broken down a little bit, buddy. And so they gave them the giant broken down bill. And then what they did is they fed the bill into Claude AI with their, I think, $20 a month subscription. And Claude AI was able to point out issues with the billing that took the $195,000 bill down to $33,000. Now, was AI absolutely 100% necessary for this? The answer is no, because the first major step is give me the breakdown of the bill, and then you just have to look at it. But the AI was actually able to go through and find some things that were hard to find. And so in one instance, let's see, they say the final bill was sky high, largely because the relative's medical insurance lapsed 2 months prior to the day, but the scale of the charges was extraordinary and the bill they received was incredibly opaque. The mourning individual first had to go to some to and fro with the hospital administrators to lift the veil and break down what exactly cardiology at $70,000 represented. So one of the things that they found, though, once they got that detailed bill, is Claude proved to be a dogged forensic ally. They said the hospital billed both for a master procedure and all its components. So a master procedure says it's going to be this one thing, which includes this, and this. Okay, so the master covers all of that, whereas if you don't do the master, you just itemize the individual items. Well, it charged for the master and every individual item. Now, is that a simple mistake? Probably not. It's probably because these hospitals are corporate-run hospitals that are responsible to their fiduciary shareholders and not the local stakeholders. And if the hospitals went back to being accountable to the local stakeholders, who would actually probably crucify them for doing this type of meddling with people's lives and their pocketbooks, we would probably have a lot better of a medical system. But as long as the hospital is allowed to be corporate and the corporate follows under the laws of the SEC and the fiduciary responsibility of the corporation is to enrich the shareholders, guess what? They don't really care, because for every one guy that finds all of the errors to take a $195,000 bill and turn it into $33,000, they're going to find about 50 people who simply pay it with their mourning. And that is the biggest scandal here. We don't need to solve it through some government policy. We need to solve it by saying, yeah, hospitals can't be for-profit corporations under the SEC filings. All right, just end it. End it. Hospitals can't do that. Hospitals can't be for-profit. There you go. We solve a lot of problems right there. All right. But the hospital billed the master procedure, again, for every component of it. It unpacked the hospital's also improper use of inpatient versus emergency code. So there's a difference there. And obviously one of them charges more and it should have charged less. So it found that. You'll find that every single thing here, the hospital is beefing up the bill, which is why I'm being so hard on the hospital. Okay, so another big catch was an issue where a ventilator services are billed on the same day as an emergency, which is actually a regulatory violation in some circumstances. So they might actually be able to be looked at by regulatory boards to see if they're doing things. So long story short, the hospital made up its own rules, its own prices, and figured it could grab as much money from unsophisticated people. That's what the family said. After the great work on the figures, the chatbot helped to create letters that held a lot of the the sort of legal action, bad PR, and appearances before legislative committees. And this ultimately whittled the bill down to $33,000 from $195,000. But the family seemed much more satisfied with their $20 per month Claude subscription. So obviously AI can have some positive impacts. I don't want to completely reject that. But that being said, I do want to spend a lot of time talking about why the AI itself here is much more problematic. Okay. And we're gonna go down to flat out dystopian. We're going to start with bad and we're going to end in Lord take me please. All right. So Atlas browser pushes out. This is OpenAI's new agentic browser. Of course, Perplexity has their browser. I think that one's Comet. And then Microsoft just released an AI agentic version of Edge. And of course, OpenAI's like, oh, we're getting panicky. We don't have our AI agentic browser. Yep, quick, get it to market. They get it out to market. And guess what? This thing is super susceptible to prompt suggestions, which Brave identified. We talked about that a little while ago. So it did not take researchers long to find that Combining the search and prompt bar called the Omnibox can be exploited, what they call a prompt injection, which means we may have to start worrying about the dangers of this prompt injection. When you give your browser the power to act on your behalf, you are giving criminals a chance to abuse that trust. So brave researchers a few months ago said AI-powered browsers that can take actions on your behalf are powerful yet extremely risky. If you're signed into sensitive accounts like your bank or your email provider in your browser, simply summarizing a specifically fabricated Reddit post could result in an attacker being able to steal money or your private data. And they demonstrated this. I think it was on the comment browser. OpenAI, however, claims to have implemented protections against all of these. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. You know, it's kind of like the story we covered the other day. You know, what was it? That was the AI education. Our system is designed; it cannot possibly hallucinate. Yeah, right. Hallucinate itself right into sexual misconduct. All right. Agentic mode runs also operate under certain boundaries. Cannot run code in the browser, download files, or install extensions. Data access cannot access other apps on your computer or file systems to read or write ChatGPT memories, access saved passwords, or use autofill data. Browsing activity, pages, ChatGPT visits in agentic mode are not added to your browsing history. See, none of that precludes being attacked by being signed into a bank or by being signed into an email. Brave demonstrates it. That's it. These safeguards are not safeguards against those. These often fail because they interpret any instructions they find as user prompts without a stricter input validation. With more robust boundaries, these tools remain highly vulnerable to prompt injection attacks. Now, the thing is that agentic browsers are too new. We have not seen solid in the wild breaches of these yet, but I promise as these are rolling out, more people are using them, we are going to find those. I'll give it maybe a month or two. Depending on these. Now, of course, we mentioned this briefly, but Amazon is now cutting 30,000 corporate jobs. Could be implementing the largest job reduction since 2023. The job cuts are expected to affect various sectors, including human resources, devices and services, operations, and others. So Amazon continues to implement more AI agents and fewer corporate jobs will be needed. Now, there was some discussion about this that I saw the other day, and I forget who it was I was watching. But they said, when, a lot of automation came in, like ATMs came in. Your ATMs came in and people thought it would completely kill bank tellers. And according to this person, and he didn't cite statistics or cite resources, but according to this person, there actually caused an increase in the need of bank tellers. Although I'm not quite sure why. And obviously, ATMs occurred, decades and decades ago. And one of the things I know right now is some of these banks are consolidating so much it's annoying. In fact, I just had one of my banks where one of my corporate accounts is at, and I go with small banks. Well, 3 small regional banks all merged into one. So they reset all of the password stuff, and then they sent us this thing that was not particularly easy to figure out what the actual temporary password was, and I get locked out of it, so I have to call them up this morning, and our call is important to you for 40 minutes on hold. So where we went to a small regional bank where I'd call it and an operator at the local bank would pick up, now I go to, I don't know how big these guys are now, but I had to sit on hold for 40 minutes to explain my problem to the first person, pick up the phone and go, well, we'll have to transfer you to our team for that. And so now I got transferred around to another team. Fortunately, they picked up in only like 5 minutes of hold. So it's like a giant colossal waste of time, and all because of forms of automation. Now, I know in one of the other banks that I work with, they've actually been cutting whole branches down. In fact, we had branches out. We had a branch out in Millheim, a branch out in Spring Mills, a branch out in Center Hall, and then there's like 6 branches in State College. Well, they cut the branch in Millheim and said, well, it's just a short drive to go to Spring Mills. And then they killed the bank in Spring Mills. Well, it's just a short drive to Center Hall. Then they killed the one in Center Hall. Well, it's just a short drive to Bollesburg. And then they closed one in Bollesburg. But we still have 5 branches in State College. Why don't you cut one of the 5 branches in State College and keep a few of the remote ones out there? And all those people lost their jobs. So was that AI or ATMs? Neither of those. But the point is that we can't simply say, hey, AI is going to cut this over. You see, the ATM cuts out small, simple tasks like going in there and taking out money. That's a simple automation. 30,000 jobs being cut to outsource it to AI. That is, we are not replacing 30,000 jobs with fixing the AI, watching the models. No, we have reached a point where job losses are going down. And the person he was debating with, he's like, I don't know about that, because right now we have one of the lower workforce participations since 1970s. And so, and how much of this, and we've been seeing a big drop off since AI was released only a couple years ago. So we are going to see a lot more job losses. And yes, AI will bring some jobs with it. I mean, we'll get more power plant workers as these companies are forced to turn on nuclear power plants again. But it's not going to take, of course, they're going to power that with AI mostly too. And it's not going to be a significant amount of jobs. It's certainly not going to be 30,000 jobs created. Amazon's not going to create 30,000 jobs in one other area by cutting 30,000 out of this area. And I see us, we have reached a turning point that we've reached that peak automation that's going to cause a mass job loss. And that will be a fundamental problem. And then, of course, moving on, this one here is actually tied to a TikTok prank that's going around right now. So if you have kids on TikTok, please love your children enough to keep them off of that toxic platform. But let's say you do. The TikTok joke that's been going around lately is teenage kids, usually it's been really popular among the girls trying to get a laugh from their parents. They'll use one of these AI things like Nana Banana, and they'll Photoshop a homeless guy in their bed. And then, so they'll take a selfie of them in the room alone with their bed in the background. And then they have one of the AI platforms put a homeless man sitting on the bed, and they'll text their parents this picture and go, hey, this guy was really hungry and he was tired, so I let him in and let him sleep on my bed and stuff like this. And it's caused a lot of parents are like, oh, what are you doing? All this kind of stuff. Well, this woman thought it would be fun to do this very same thing. So she sends she takes a picture of herself and uses one of these AI platforms to put a masked man behind her. And she texts this to her husband, thinking her husband's going to run home like the hero and kick in the door and get this guy out. Well, the guy did what any sane, rational guy does when his wife is being threatened. He calls the police. So the police come and kick the door in with a battering ram. 7 guys burst into the door and they bust in there and find, oh, it was all a prank on the husband. So now the woman gets to go to jail and the husband has to think, is this a divorceable cause? Okay. And so this is just kind of tied in. Just be aware that this is a TikTok trend going around where people will put either a homeless guy or a burglar or something in there and text that out, going like, oh my God, what's going on? And I got news, I feel strongly about this. If you use these AI or the internet to do some type of crime like this, I think you should lose your computer privileges legally. I mean, we keep pedophiles off of computers when they're released from jail. Usually for almost ever. We should do the same thing. If you go to jail connected to some stupid internet social media prank, you should lose your privileges to use a computer. You should. You have demonstrated you are not competent enough to handle this thing that you want to make a prank about this. And so this gal, at least she goes to, I don't know if that's an actual footage. You never know if these are actual. I think this is actually real footage. I think this one is. But yeah, so that woman does something stupid. Of course, all this empowered by AI. So AI is now giving us a tool that we're using to prank our family members and causing deep stress in so doing. This is ridiculous. We've talked about character AI before. Well, we have a second self-deletion among teenage audience with character AI. So now it's dealing with, on top of the first 2 lawsuits I had for one self-deletion and one failed self-deletion, now we have a third lawsuit against character AI for once again self-deletion. And so they said, okay, we're using age verification. We're going to kick teenagers off our platform. Now, didn't exactly state it exactly that way, but what they're trying to say is we're trying to shift from being a AI companion chat to being a story builder type chat, so you can kind of role play with it and develop a story and stuff like that. So that's what they're doing. Of course, one of the things they had said down here in the article down here, though this is the other case, this is yet another teenager engages in self-deletion. And they basically kind of say, yeah, we kind of want you to go out and use like OpenAI or some of these other chat systems instead of ours, because there's just too much liability around here. Of course, OpenAI is also finding themselves in one of these. So OpenAI have allowed open-ended conversations with chatbots as well, including some kind of dangerous things. So, yeah, we'll see a little bit more of that in our Sillyville. Now, for our last article here, it was originally going to be in Sillyville, but I thought I warned about this stuff on the Weekly News Roundup not even 2 months ago. So, a kid named Taki is handcuffed after the school's AI security system flags his Doritos as a gun. All right, so I warned about these in a video, one of our headlining videos a couple weeks ago. I think it was a month or two. And we were talking about these schools are implementing these AI systems, which are supposed to detect all these things. Of course, we had the hilarious one where the one university was sent into lockdown because a guy was carrying an umbrella. I mean, how dare you carry an umbrella on a day it's forecasted to rain? You can't possibly be doing that. And that was a little bit more hilarious because of the things going on. Now, here is the thing about this, is that in this instance here, this is a high school. This is a Baltimore high school, which Baltimore, if you're unaware, is one of these. It has a very high crime rate, and it has a lot of the racial conflict going on. And so this is, I believe, a black student who is eating a bag of Doritos on school property, I think it was outside of school. And the AI system deployed on the campus grounds flagged the Doritos as a gun. So now you have an AI falsely flagging a black man holding Doritos as a black man holding a gun. And so it causes a whole bunch of police to rush in, and without assessing the scenes, they simply rush in and handcuff the teenager. And I think he was 16, 16 or 17, somewhere over here. All right. And so they come in, they do this, and then they start grabbing all the photos and detailing them closely. Now, there's body cam footage here. It's like 3 minutes, and it is literally the most boring body cam footage I've ever seen. This is not police rushing in and handcuffing a kid. It's literally part of the investigation, so I'm not going to play that. If you want to watch it, you can find the article. All the links are in the description down below. You can read it, and you can watch this. It is truly, from a guy who watches a lot of police body cam footage, this is one of those boring body cams I've ever seen. But just a warning, so I'm not going to play any of it here. But 16-year-old Taki Allen is handcuffed for the investigation of looking at this. All right. Now, there's a bunch of other things in there. Of course, a lot of fun, not to be jokes about it. But here's kind of what I wanted to say about this, okay? I warned about this already. And here we have a place which already has a lot of racial conflict. Police bust in and they handcuff a 16-year-old black man for holding a bag of Doritos, because the AI falsely flagged a bag of Doritos as a gun. All right. Now, the police should have absolutely looked at these photos before busting on in, for sure. Because it was pretty clear to them once they looked at the photos for probably the first time, that looks like a bag of chips. Is that a bag of chips? I think it's a bag of chips. Hey, there's a bag of chips in the garbage can over there. Maybe it's a bag of chips. All right, we'll unhandcuff you now. It's clearly a bag of chips. I warned about this type of stuff. And these are the AI systems that are trying to get themselves all over the place. If it's bad enough we have flock cameras, now we got these AI nonsense cameras coming out here as well. I got news for you. I hope this kid's parents sue, and I hope this kid's parents get $1 million. And I hope this kid gets a chance to go to college on that $1 million. But here's the kicker. This $1 million benefit I would like this kid to get should not come from the school district. That's the taxpayers. Why in the world should the local taxpayers of Baltimore have to pay out $1 million settlement over something the AI company falsely did? So here's what I think needs to happen. The AI company needs to be held completely liable for its false flag. They need to pay this teenager $1 million and the family. They need to issue an apology, decommission their system, and refund everybody. And what about all the VCs? F the VCs. Screw off, VCs. Y'all lost billions of dollars because you pushed out a stupid AI system that flags a bag of Doritos as a gun and causes a kid to be handcuffed. F around and find out. The VCs that funded that project, the company behind it, they should be paying the money. Not the school district, not the taxpayers, not the police, the AI company. And once again, I'm going to say it, as I said before, we have got to know who is liable for these things before we roll this crap out into the public space, because this is a real world consequence when a bunch of police officers roll in and throw a kid in handcuffs over a bag of Doritos. This is insane. Insane. We need to stop this kind of crap. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments down below and tell me, do you agree? Is our AI a bigger liability? Let me know.